I am calling to order the meeting of the City of Salem Budget Committee for April 23rd, 2025, and I get to use the gavel. Now, can the recorder please call the roll?
Member Belicheks.
Here.
Member Nishioka.
Here.
Member Brown.
Present.
Member Manville.
Here.
Member Vieira Brandel.
Here.
Member Tigan.
Here.
Member Matthews.
Here.
Member Gwen.
Here.
Member Julie Hoy.
Here.
Member Nordike. Member Varney.
Here.
Member Dixon.
Here.
Member Curtis.
Here.
Member Fuller.
Here.
Member Geyer.
Here.
Vice Chair Cohen.
Present.
And Chair Allen.
Here. Thank you. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, thank you all for coming out this evening. I just wanted to start by commenting and recognizing and thanking everyone for the way in which we were able to handle the last meeting. These are very, very difficult times with very difficult decisions ahead of us. And the only way we're going to get to the end with a quality product or the best quality product possible is if we continue to have decorum and show respect one for another. So I just wanted to thank everyone for how they participated in the last meeting, making my job easier. We have some additions to the agenda, which includes written testimony, an errata, and a staff report. Could I have a motion to approve the additions to the agenda?
I move to approve the additions agenda.
We have second by Member Gwynn. That motion was forwarded by Member Cohen, seconded by Member Gwynn. Is there any discussion? Member Manville.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood, since it's $6.5 million, that it's just coming out of the utility fund, the Detroit water supply. Is that correct?
Yeah, Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. We're going to touch on that in just a little bit when we actually go to approve it.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Okay. We have public testimony, or we have one person signed up this evening for public testimony, and I thank the person profusely for their penmanship. Kelsey Lamb, if you could please come to the lectern, and please state your name, the ward that you're from. You have 3 minutes. After 2 minutes, the little light will blink, and when it's red, your time's up.
Thanks. Hello, my name is Kelsey Lamb, and I live in Ward 3. I wanted to speak today about the budget. In the City of Salem financial summary through Q2 fiscal year 2025, it states that the library was less than 2.3 million of the approximately 83 million budget when examined by total expenditures by department as per the attached document for today's meeting agenda. That is 2.76% of the budget, yet with the proposed budget, 20 of the 36 filled positions, really 23 when you consider limited duration contracts, are being cut from the library, or at least 55% of the total cuts of filled positions. I understand cuts need to be made, but I refuse to believe this is the only or the best option. The only immediate plan that I'm seeing being pursued now is to hope this livability levy passes. When supporters of community services come or speak out, chairs and officials ask us, what are we doing to support the passing of this levy? We are doing everything we can, tabling, canvassing, texting, writing neighbors and counselors, speaking with our community, and even working to form a PAC in support. What else can we do as a team? I know we had the town hall. There is some attendance at neighborhood associations, but not by all counselors. You reply to constituents' emails, and you may hold live videos on social media, but these methods are only reaching the people most heavily involved in local politics. How will you reach those not as involved? Any and all community events should be targeted for speaking. This budget issue is nonpartisan. Is it possible to speak at a church event? Is it possible to briefly mention it at the beginning of an open mic night at Infinity Room or other unconventional ideas to reach Salem voters? Salem Reporter regularly lists events occurring in the city, or what about outreach at family nights at schools in your ward? Every counselor should be pursuing these types of opportunities and more. I love this community and I am passionate about the services they deserve, especially people who don't have the ability to voice these concerns. As our budget has dwindled due to a growing community and Measures 5 and 50 limiting property taxes, I know how the services at the library have also dwindled. The staff are what make the library magical. With the cuts the library has already taken over the last 15 years, West Salem no longer has dedicated staff like most other library branches. We drive over from Maine. The same staff. I'm in youth services, so I can share info about services for family and how those have changed. We used to offer 9 story times a week to help meet demand. And now we have only about 5 with no weekend or evening options like we did previously. We used to have dedicated monthly reoccurring programs like Art Starts and Full Steam Ahead, which were monthly STEAM programs for pre-K and elementary respectively. We had Discovery Kids monthly for preschoolers. We had an early reader book club and a chapter book club that met monthly. Having regularly scheduled monthly programs is essential for meeting the community, but we no longer have this luxury. Bookmobile used to visit every first grade classroom. The Discovery Room used to be interactive. These cuts affect the community, and by advocating and securing dedicated funding, programs and services for our community can improve again. Please advocate for the levy, but also please advocate for departments disproportionately cut and rethink the proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. Kelsey was the only one who signed up this evening for public testimony. There's no one signed up for Zoom. So that is the conclusion of the public testimony at this time. We've also received written correspondence as listed under item 2 on the agenda with and the additions agenda. So I ask everyone to please pay close attention to the written correspondence as well. Next order of business on the agenda are approval of the April 16, 2025 Budget Committee meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 16, 2025 meeting?
I move to approve the minutes from the April 16th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
I have a motion from Member Cohen and a second from Member Manville. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. The motion passes unanimously. There is one action item this evening. Mr. Eggleston, would you please walk us through errata number 2?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's 2 things happening in errata number 2. One is to correct an error where we coded $75,000 to the wrong expenditure category related to system development charges. So when we adopt the budget, we actually adopt it at the category level, so we can't administratively move it from one to another. So we need to make this correction and make sure it's in the right spot. The second piece is new information. So the engineering division anticipates an additional $6.5 million will be needed for the fiscal year 2026 Detroit water supply mitigation project. So this is new information, so we'd like to adjust the construction budget accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Josh, for reviewing the item. Well, I can talk really loud. Okay, but thank you, Member Brown. Thank you, Josh, for reviewing the item. May I have a motion to approve errata number 2?
I move to approve errata number 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
I heard Member Manville first. So I have a motion from Member Cohen and a second from Member Manville. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? There are none. The motion passes unanimously. Next, we will move on to information items. These items include 3 staff reports and 2 quarterly reports. Josh, I have a feeling that you're going to continue to take the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief summary. So we have 2 reports that answer Budget Committee questions. One for summary of budget committee actions, and then the 2 quarterly reports for the City of Salem and the Urban Renewal Agency. These were delivered to the City Council back in February, but we want to make sure the Budget Committee had them as well. And I have received a question about quarter 3. that closed at the end of last month, and we do intend to get that to the Budget Committee during one of your next 2 meetings, so you will have that information as well. But happy to answer any questions you might have about these information items, or if they relate to different result areas, different night, we're happy to take up those questions, and we can look back and talk about them next week as well.
Are there any questions of Josh at this time? Silence is golden. Thank you. The next item on the agenda will be to conduct a public hearing on the proposed capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2026 through 2030. We will first hear a presentation on the proposed CIP. After the presentation, there will be time for public testimony regarding the CIP. At the conclusion of public testimony, the Budget Committee will then have the opportunity to ask questions of staff. Take it away.
Chair Allen, it's me, sorry. I just want to confirm you've opened the public hearing.
I noticed that I missed another opportunity to use the gavel.
Use your gavel, I know.
Okay.
Thank you so
The public hearing
much.
is now open.
Thank you.
James Warden Hess will provide presentation.
Thank you very much. My name is James Wharton Hess. I'm an analyst in the Budget Office, and I am here to present the 2026 through 2030 Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP as we call it. So what is a CIP? A CIP is really helpful when planning projects that span multiple years. So unlike a budget that is a snapshot of 1 year, CIPs are really helpful when trying to plan out projects that last multiple years. Another reason we do capital financial planning is because in order to adopt system development charges, or SDCs, we have to have an adopted financial plan for that, and the CIP meets that requirement. And then a few things about the CIP. This year is the first year that the threshold for capital improvement projects in the CIP is $100,000. That was just increased last year from $50,000, which had been that amount for a long time prior. So a little bit about how projects are identified. CIP projects are identified in multiple ways, including via infrastructure assessments, planning processes, plan documents, and updates. And for the urban renewal area, that's by the master plan updates, strategic action plans, advisory board meetings provide guidance and direction for included projects. The city's various infrastructure plans, such as the TSP and the Park System Master Plan, are also important to the process and contribute to CIP development. And then in terms of public outreach, the CIP is noticed to the public in several ways, and often the projects that are included in the CIP are part of a master plan or other process that includes outreach to neighborhood associations or advisory boards. The CIP webpage includes information about the CIP development process as well as prior year CIP documents. The website also includes a new and improved project request form that allows residents to submit projects to be considered for the CIP. And those can be submitted anytime throughout the year, and then staff will review them. The website also contains information to help display individual projects. So the GIS team, which includes staff from IT and Public Works, has completed that project, and you can go on the website and click on any specific project, and it'll come up with a little pop-up box that'll show you the details of each project. Oh, and one other thing is each year a public hearing is held to receive feedback on the plan. That's why I'm here. And the public hearing is noticed through the weekly emailed Salem Community Connection and the city's website. All right. So what is in the CIP? The CIP only includes issues or projects with identified funding. So there's plenty of issues throughout the city that don't have identified funding. You won't find those in the CIP. Staff tracks those, but only once they have identified funding are they included. I mentioned the $100,000 threshold, so anything that's a capital project that's below the $100,000, you will see in the budget, but you won't see in the CIP. And finally, it only includes new funding. So there's plenty of funding from previous projects, previous years that has been adopted that rolls over into the next year, but you will not see that in the CIP either. So then how that relates to the budget, you will see all project funding from the first year of the CIP in the budget, but that will be in addition to those carryover projects and mid-year additions, reappropriations, like I said, the projects that are below $100,000, and there's some administrative costs too. And then really quick, I'll breeze through this because it's fairly intuitive, but these are what each project page looks like. You'll see plenty of them throughout the CIP, and just wanted to go through how to read them. So in the top left, you'll see the project number. That's the unique identifier for each project, followed by the category of the project, the neighborhood or neighborhood associations that the project occurs in, and the title of the project. Then up in the right-hand corner, you'll see the score, if there is one, and the ward or wards that the project occurs in. Under that is the financial section. That's sort of the meat of the CIP. That has the fiscal years of the CIP, all 5 of them, along with the funding sources, the total, the amount funded in prior years, and the total project cost. And then a brief description below that. So before we get into this year's CIP, I wanted to mark some of the accomplishments that the city made in 2025. 15 construction projects have been or will be completed, and that includes the Crestview Waterline Improvements Project and the Broadway Street at Pine Intersection Improvements Project. Both of those are pictured here. Additionally, 17 projects have started or will start this fiscal year, and that includes athletic court improvements, which will replace aging facilities at Hoover, Morningside, and Highland Parks, as well as the McGilchrist Street Southeast Phase 2 improvements project between Ford Street and 25th Street, which is currently under construction and happily came in under bid by 32%. So the engineering team is very proud of that. So into the current CIP we go. The 2026 through 2030 proposed CIP includes a couple of major projects, including the Civic Center seismic improvements. That's displayed on page 33 of the CIP. Is estimated to cost $42.6 million. The project is currently being designed, and construction is scheduled to begin this summer. Also, the Franzen Reservoir cover and liner replacement project is displayed on page 74 of the CIP, and that's estimated to cost $31.9 million, $8.1 million of which is currently programmed. So. And then a summary of the CIP. Quickly, there's plenty of ways to look at the CIP. From a high level, it's over the 4 years, it's $413.9 million, over 156 projects, 26 funding sources, spread out across 10 different categories of infrastructure. You all are very used to this display. That's the results area. As you can imagine, most of the projects in the CIP are safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure projects, but there are a few in other result areas. By funding source, the vast majority of funding in the CIP is either utility rates or the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond, followed by URA and then SDC funding, some grants. I did want to highlight that the general fund only contributes about $1.2 million to the CIP over the entire 5 years, and that's just one parks project, one IT project, and some building projects. In terms of category, there 39% is transportation and 38% is utilities, followed by community facilities and municipal facilities. And then a really quick rundown, $27.3 million is community facilities. That's 3 historic structures projects and 32 parks projects. $69.7 million in municipal facilities projects. That's 6 airport projects, 6 building projects, and 10 IT projects. $161.1 million in transportation projects. That's 2 streetlights projects and 38 streets projects. And $155.8 million in utility projects. That's 14 stormwater, 23 wastewater, and 22 water projects. So the staff recommendation is to recommend the proposed capital CIP for 2026 through 2030 as amended by Errata 2 for consideration by City Council. And representatives from city departments are available to answer any questions after public comment.
Thank you, James, for that presentation. No one has signed up for public comment on the CIP. Is there anyone present who would like to provide testimony regarding the capital improvement plan? Seeing none, are there any questions for staff from the Budget Committee? Member Curtis.
Thank you. And looking at this, there isn't much general fund in these projects, which is probably good. But a lot of it's federal funds, transportation, FAA for the airport, that kind of thing. Is there a plan B if those funds don't come through? Because as we know, the instability of funding from the federal government is very bad right now. So what if those funds don't come through?
Did you want to give that a shot?
Yeah, appreciate the question. I'm going to actually defer to Public Works Director Brian Martin.
Good evening, Budget Committee, Chair Allen, Brian Martin, Public Works Director. We do have a few Plan Bs, but we don't have a full list of Plan Bs. And I'll give you an example of a few projects that we have federal funding for that we're unsure of. So we received a $2.7 million grant from the FHWA as a raised grant for Front Street. So that's a project over by the cannery. We're waiting for an IGA on that. We don't expect we're going to get denied funding, but it's unsure. If we do not receive it, then we wouldn't have funding to go forward with, doing that study. We have some pedestrian safety crossing improvements. We have a grant for about 1.7. Again, we're waiting for notice to proceed from ODOT to move forward on those projects. If we did not receive it, we either would not do them or look to do some of them out of the, there's a project in the 2022 Safety and Livability Bond for pedestrian crossings. Because these are high priority, we could do the projects with those funds. We also have a street in West Salem, Orchard Heights Road that we have 2.1 million. We're also waiting for notice to proceed for construction on. We do not have a good Plan B for that one, so that may be one that we would end up having to sit on. Out at McGilchrist Street, we submitted an application to help us fund some of the culvert replacements under the road for the next phase, which is currently we're in phase 2. That would be for phase 3. We actually have utility funds ready to fund that project, so we do have a Plan B. We're hoping we could get a grant and save some of those utility funds for something else. And then lastly, we were going to submit a grant application to replace the bridge out to our Guerin Island water treatment facility, and we were told that that funding source is no longer available. So we do have, I believe, over half of that money already set aside in our program for that bridge, but we'd have to take from other projects in order to complete it. So.
Is that a follow-up? Member Curtis, go ahead.
So if projects are started and you're in phase 2 or 3 or whatever, and funding falls apart, what do we do? I mean, it's really concerning on every level of life that these funds have dried up or are drying up.
Yeah. So the only project on the list here that has started is McGilchrist Street, and we do have a backup plan for that because we've already allocated utility funds for that culvert. All of these other projects have not started yet, so we wouldn't be in a case of trying to figure out how to fund something we're halfway through.
Member Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Martin, so I have a question. It's either for you or the CFO, and it's in our CIP book. Can I ask that now or later? Now is good?
I'm seeing nods. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So on page 12, there are donations, federal grant, OPRD grant, and state grant. My question is, one, that federal grant, it looks like it's a continuation for the next several years. Are we relying on that? And the reason I'm asking is because obviously there's a lot of clawback of those federal funds. And my question is, are we counting that now?
I'm not sure which federal funds you're referring to. I'm looking at the table on page 12. Am I on the right page?
Yes, and
Okay.
go at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's number 7 for federal grants.
That's the Guerin Island Access Bridge on the 74th.
That's Guerin Island. Okay, so yeah, that would have been the Guerin Island project we've talked about.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
We have those monies in hand.
Well, no, we do not have those monies in hand. So if we did not get those monies, we would have to program it through utility rates.
Wow. Because that has a total of what, over 9 million?
Oh, the total project is about 13 million.
Okay. So if that takes care of that particular answer, is that the same thing for the OPRD grant and the state grant that we're relying upon that we're going to get those monies?
We have not had any issues with the state grants, so those are both state grants.
Both state grants, okay? And the very last one, donations is at 60,000. What are the donations?
If I may, those are matching funds for the SPIF grants, Salem Parks Improvement Fund grants. So the city allocates 60,000 and we anticipate another 60,000 donations because we require matching funds from whatever organization arranges for the grant.
Okay,
So we don't have those dollars in hand, but we don't spend the other side, the 60,000, until we do have those matching funds.
Oh, okay. Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Cohen?
Thank you, Chair. To close the loop on the Guerin Island Bridge, then, do we need to remove from the CIP the 9.2 million because it's not real in federal funds?
Do you have the page number that project is on?
Yes, sorry. It's page 74, project 443.
What I would recommend is we hold the CIP as is, and if we get the grant funding, then we're in a position to go ahead and do the work. If we don't get the grant funding, we just would not start it, or we would use our utility funds to maybe get the design started and hope for another grant opportunity next year.
Would that cause an increase in utility rates?
Potentially.
Okay.
Or you have two options. You increase rates to fund what you want to fund, or you put off funding it until the rates catch up with it. So we'll have to figure that out.
Do you have a follow-up? Member Tigan?
My question there is, the only thing that's being on Project 443 for Guerin Island, the only thing that's actually being spent this year is the $100,000 out of the utility rates for early stage design. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we just leave it the way it is, would that $100,000 have an impact on utility rates?
No.
Okay. So if we ended up reprogramming the bridge next year for utility, that's what would cause the increase in utility rates, or potential?
It potentially would. What we would likely do is look at other project savings to see if we could slide over that 1 million. The next time we'd look at rate increases for the utility would be in 2027.
But as programmed for fiscal year 26?
As programmed for fiscal year 26, we're fine. We'll see where we're at next year with fiscal year 27, and we may have to make an adjustment to delay the project or slow design down just to the 900,000 that we've got programmed with utility funds.
Thank you.
Josh?
Yeah, just for some clarity, because I know when James walked through the presentation, it talked about only funded projects are included in the CIP. And sometimes we have these situations with grants where having them in the CIP and showing matching funds assists with the grant application. So you'll see these in some cases where we want to show our funding and we want to show the federal grant and our reliance on that federal grant for the project. So having it in here helps secure the grant in the long run. So I apologize for any confusion there, but it's not secured, it's not in the bank, but it is going toward that grant application. We will make adjustments if we don't get the grant.
Member Dixon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the council policy on the capital improvement program, it's C9, item J says the city will move towards establishment of a future maintenance/replacement reserve account segregated by fund and program. Is that included in the capital improvement plan anywhere? Are there maintenance and replacement reserve accounts that have been established?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So we have some areas of the construction fund that operate like that, where you have funds set aside for future use or opportunity funds for unanticipated needs. We also have the equipment replacement fund that operates that way on a smaller scale, often for equipment, but there are some large purchases that we set aside funds for, like large software replacements. So we do it on a small scale, but it's certainly not universal.
Okay. May I follow up?
Sure.
Is equipment considered part of capital?
So rolling stock is not. So if it has wheels, it's not considered part of the CIP, but if it doesn't have wheels, it is considered part of the CIP. So there's a little nuance there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair. In listing the potential federal funding that might be at risk, is the taxiway A North rehab at all at risk, or is that solid?
It's programmed in the federal CIP as well, but it's not solid until we have an agreement in place that dedicates the funds. So.
Member Tigan.
Thanks. It's a little bit like pinball, but that's the fun of the CIP nights. I'd like to go to the street section for a moment and look at Project 1529, which is the Fisher Road Northeast Urban Upgrades on page 51. Baseball fans keeping score at home. I don't know the city's terminology about Fisher Road well enough to understand where on Fisher Road this upgrade is taking place. I think there's an existing sewer upgrade or something like that on the CIP map, and I'm wondering if the street upgrade is on the same stretch of road.
I'll share where the street improvement is located. The S curve just north of Market Street. So behind the Power car dealership, we extended Fisher Road to complete that S. That's to an urban standard, but once you get past it, then it is not to an urban standard. It is going to go from there north to, I believe, Silverton Road. So it will go to Silverton Road, and I'm not sure where the sewer project is. If it is, it is. So it's underneath that roadway. So it'd be a project where we would replace the sewer while we have the road dug open and not have to worry about going back shortly after the road project is complete and have to open it up and replace the sewer line.
I'd just like to know, I'm really appreciative that this project is here. I think we've heard for many years about the troubles on Fisher Road, speed. It's essentially striped like a 2-lane highway and it's treated like one, even though it's should be driven much slower than that. And the mayor and I had a conversation about this stretch of road recently, and I just appreciate that. This will be a much safer place to walk, to traverse, and hopefully drive. Though it's clear it's going to take a certain amount of time to do it, I think that's going to be good news for the folks who live on Fisher Road. So thank you for including it.
Member Matthews.
Yeah, so I had a question. So on here, anything that says project budgeted, right? So we don't have the breakdown of what that is any longer because it's no longer as part of the CIP. Is that my understanding?
Yes, that's correct.
So on projects like Project 1559 or 1560, which is Library Branch Northern Site, Library Branch Southern Site. So obviously we have other issues right now in staffing, and knowing that's the case, are those projects still moving forward in doing those two projects, or does that money look like getting reallocated? What happens there, since there's not actually a breakdown now?
What page is that on, Counselor? It's not in the book. Okay.
So it's
already in the
page 8 of the CIP master file, or the proposal under municipal facilities.
Okay.
So it was when you're looking at like the overall projects.
So those projects were included as part of the safety and livability bond, and I believe we're moving forward just looking at locations and potentially acquiring property but we don't have plans to move forward with actually designing and constructing the library at this time.
Okay. Okay.
Member Curtis?
Thank you. One more question about federal funding. So on the airport pages, which start at 30, there's a lot of FAA money. And I don't know enough about the airport, but I know there's improvements and things that we have to do in order to have an airport. And so we have to meet certain standards, for the FAA, but also I assume for a VLO. And what happens, I don't know if that $7,222,000 on page 30 is in our bank account, or if that's just we think it's coming. There's another $6 million on page 31 from FAA. So I'm just concerned that if we're tied into these improvements that need to be made at the airport, for safety reasons, how are we going to fund those if that money doesn't come through? I know I sound really pessimistic, but.
That's an excellent question. That money is not in the bank, and it is included in the FAA CIP. I'm hopeful that because it's necessary for commercial air service and the safety of passengers, that the FAA would continue through with what they're proposing for grant options. If they don't, we'd have to hold and not move forward with them until such time as that funding became available, and we would likely then do minor crack sealing and slurry sealing things just to try and keep it in place until the federal money comes through to where we can actually do a full rehabilitation or resurfacing project.
Follow up, go ahead, Member Curtis.
And does that affect our ability to keep the airport open if we don't do certain things? I know I'm asking really basic questions, but.
I wouldn't see that affecting us keeping the airport open for the next several years.
Okay.
Member Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. To Member Matthews' comment, it's one that I've actually brought up to Josh before, and it's something that I wish the council will have a robust conversation about, because unfortunately at the budget committee level, we are unable to make those changes. But I do think that it is a need for the council to have this conversation. To Josh's point, when he brought this up to me, land is not getting cheaper. And so there is a reason why the city still has it and has not sold it. But if we just look underneath where it was talking about the branch locations, fire stations, roofs have been removed because of general fund constraints. And as we just learned with federal funds for the Guerin Island bridge access, those might not be there. I would support repurposing those funds from land of buildings that may never happen to actual projects that are desperately needed in our community. However, that is something that the Budget Committee is not in our purview, and I would recommend for the council to have a robust conversation. The Oversight Committee for the Capital Improvement Plan to start that conversation, because I think that is desperately needed.
And Andrew, I apologize, you should have said Vice Chair Cohen. But thank you. Member, was it Manville?
Thank you. Just a clarification, when the budget book has total estimated project cost, is that just for the 5 years, or is that the project's going to be done? For example, Marine Drive, okay, in 5th year, we're spending $8 million. Is it then like phase 1 is done? Or like, is it just rolling up the 5 years, or is it like, okay, that project is completely done?
Just to clarify, you're talking about in the CIP where it talks about amount funded in prior years and then adds it for the total estimated project cost?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
So in most cases, that will be the total estimated project cost, including prior funding. There are probably a few cases where there's phases that are broken out as separate projects. So there might be companion funding in other sections. So I wouldn't want to say 100% of the time that it's going to be holistic. Like if you said, hey, this is everything for McGilchrist, I'd be a little nervous to say that one. But for most projects, yes, it would be holistic to say that's the full project cost.
Could I add one thing to CFO Eggleston's comment? With the safety and livability bond, because it's a 10-year bond, some of those funds we won't be programming until years 5 through, well, maybe years 6 through 8 now. So there are going to be some funds where you'll see things starting, but they won't finish until years 8, 9, and 10, which we're already 2 years into it. So there may be some funding you wouldn't see, but that would be the only case where I would expect that everything else would follow in line with our CFO has stated.
Thank you, Brian. So what you're saying is if this goes through 2030, right, so there's 2031, and so on. So there could be additional dollars allocated in the future that are outside this 5-year look.
And they wouldn't be part of the total.
Correct.
Member Dixon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to the comments about accounting for funding or planning for funding that's uncertain for projects that are in the plan, I also have a real concern about funding the maintenance for those projects once they're built. We already have problems with transportation infrastructure and parks infrastructure, and my concern is that when we add new infrastructure on top of all of that, we're just compounding a problem. So that's my comment.
Any further questions of staff at this time? I am not seeing any, therefore the public hearing is now closed. Prior to me asking for a motion, are there any further discussion or deliberations from the Budget Committee? Seeing none, may I have a motion recommending the proposed FY 2026 through FY 2030 capital improvements plan as amended by errata 2 to the City Council for adoption?
I move the proposed FY 26 through FY 30 capital improvement plan as amended by the errata 2 to the City Council for adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been, I have a motion from Member Cohen and a second from Member Gwynn. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Member Tigan.
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge Member Cohen's suggestion to the City Council about considering things like the land acquisition for the library. I think yes, it was a unanimous vote for the City Council to support Member Matthews' motion on Monday to have a full accounting of all of the property that the city owns with across the organization as a whole. And I think that's, I'd expect to see any property associated with future library branches or fire stations to be included in that. So I think just want to acknowledge that and putting the pieces together to have that robust conversation as you suggested. So thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the motion to recommend the FY 2026 through FY 2030 capital improvement plan as amended by errata 2 to the City Council for adoption, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no.
No.
So that was Member Dixon and Member Manville who voted no. The motion passes. Member Dixon, I believe you had something you wanted to bring up at this time.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to offer the following motion regarding the capital improvement plan. Acknowledging the lack of funding to maintain transportation and parks infrastructure and the harm that can result from underfunding maintenance in general, I move that the Budget Committee recommend that the City Council add a provision to Council Policy C9, which governs the capital improvement plan. The provision would block funds to add new infrastructure in a category where there was not enough money to maintain current infrastructure in that category. Rehabilitation, reconstruction, and upgrades would not be prohibited, nor would projects already in the CIP. The provision would take effect in 2027.
I'll second the motion for the purpose of discussion.
We have a motion by Member Dixon and a second by Member Tygart. Okay, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would
further?
like to. Thank you,
ahead.
Mr. Chairman. I am concerned about the city's ability to maintain the infrastructure it has in the transportation and parks areas of the capital improvement plan. In the area of transportation, a report to the Budget Committee in January indicated that there is a $9.1 million a year gap between available funds and the amount needed to maintain the streets, sidewalks, and other components of the transportation group in fair condition. That same January report indicated that at current spending levels, the Transportation Services Fund is forecast to go into the red in 2029. In the area of parks maintenance, the 2026 budget document says the city has continued to increase its developed parks acreage and facilities without a corresponding increase in staffing and is proposing a budget that would reduce staff and resources even more. Also referring to the 2026 budget document, my review of the capital improvements budget indicates that the city plans to spend roughly $10 million in 2026 on projects that will add new transportation and parks infrastructure. These are not repairs and replacements. They include $3 million to design Phase 1 of Marine Drive Northwest and $2.2 million to install new athletic courts at 5 parks. These are all worthy projects with strong community support. Some of them are funded by the 22 Safety and Livability Bond. But regardless of funding source, they all create new long-term obligations for maintenance. Adding new projects when the city doesn't have a clear plan to maintain what it already has seems unwise. My motion offers one way to start confronting this problem without disrupting projects that are already in the pipeline. I believe it is a reasonable approach that will strengthen the city's finances and infrastructure for the long term. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Member Manville.
Yeah, question of the motion maker. When you say category, are you just saying like parks and like the categories that they're saying in here, or is it are they broad categories or are they narrow categories? I guess is my question.
Thank you for the question. The CIP does address transportation as a category and parks as a category. That's what I'm addressing.
Thank you for that clarification. Sorry.
Follow up.
Sorry. Additional question. So anything that's in this CIP for the next anything that's started in the next 5 years and is in this CIP, presuming the council adopts it, could move forward?
Yeah, the way it's worded is adding new infrastructure, and that projects already in the CIP would not be affected. So new things in addition to this, or on top of what.
I will interject at this time to ask staff if you've had any opportunity to think about what the practical implications of this motion would be.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. We saw it earlier today, and I'm going to see if Brian wants to address that at a high level.
Brian Martin, Public Works Director again. Yeah, I did see that this afternoon. I have a couple concerns. I understand, the theory behind it and the reason for it, and if we can't afford to maintain, why would we continue to build? There are some side impacts, though. Whenever developers develop property for apartments, houses, whatever, they have to build off-site and street improvements. And if we were to say that we're not going to, well, as part of those off-site street improvements, many of them are reimbursable through SDCs, so they're system development charges. In order to collect system development charges, which are for capacity and growth, we can't tell people not to build the improvements. So we would face a challenge with future development if we were to enact it as it's written now, because We don't want developers to develop without building the infrastructure that's needed, which we then have to maintain in the long run. So we definitely would need that infrastructure, and I don't think we want to tell developers not to develop anymore. So that would be the dilemma I would see with it. The other concern I would have is there are meaningful projects such in the safety and livability bond, and I'll think of something smaller, for example, filling in missing sidewalk locations. You know, from my perspective, we have these gaps that are unsafe now, and we have an opportunity with the bond funds to go out and close these gaps so people can, you know, travel down our sidewalk corridors more safely without having to walk out into the streets because there's been a missing sidewalk chunk. So potentially could have an impact on us as well. So those are a couple high-level things I thought about this afternoon when I read it, and I just want to make sure everyone's aware that it could have some other implications.
Member Dixon?
If I may, just to clarify, the intent is only to address projects that would add new infrastructure and not to interfere with rehabilitation, reconstruction, or upgrades.
Would not
interfere with those. It would only affect projects that would add new infrastructure, and only in a category that was underfunded.
His example of the sidewalk, would that not be new infrastructure?
It looks to me like they're rehabilitating and upgrading existing infrastructure, filling in a gap in an existing sidewalk.
Okay.
But that's open to interpretation.
Okay. The mayor has a comment.
Thank you. Yeah, what came to my mind as you were reading your motion was we have a housing crisis, and we have building to do, and that we're going to need new infrastructure in order to make that happen. And I happen to feel that if you're putting in a new piece of sidewalk where there's never been a sidewalk, that is new infrastructure, even if it only fills a gap. The other piece, let's see. Oh, but I agree with parks. I think we should not be buying more park space if we can't maintain what we have. So those are my two thoughts. Thank you.
Vice Chair Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. First, I guess a question to you, Bill. What is a little confusing to me is the enough money. We need to determine what that threshold is for this to move forward in my mind. And so I would need to know from our agencies what threshold they need to maintain infrastructure in order to do that. And you forced me to look up what C9 was from the council policy, so thank you. What I could see happening if this motion were to fail would be under the policy section 3 subsection C review committee. The staff review committee will be made up of engineering, planning, operational staff, and other departmental staff that will review all project requests, make recommendations, analyze, blah, blah, blah. Within that, I would add that there should be some sort of requirement that there is sufficient funding for continual usage. So that's one place in which I could see adding information to beef up this policy. The other one would be in where'd it go? Yes, Jay. Would be, yeah, more information along that lines, but that'd be needing to be wordsmithed out by, I'm sure, the city attorney.
On the, may I? On the issue of what's, what clarifies as in underfunded. The best examples I can give right now are in transportation. We know that we can't maintain what we have at even a fair level. We don't have the funds. And in parks maintenance, we know that we don't have the staff to maintain the parks we have, and we know it's going to get worse assuming the proposed budget is adopted. So maybe right now it's just you know it when you see it. I have not thought through a specific guideline for that. It's a great question.
All right, we're continuing deliberation on the motion that's on the floor. Vice Chair Cohen, do you have deliberations on the motion?
Well, to your point, what would be a consideration would be, okay, is mowing the lawn every 2 weeks or 4 weeks? What is that threshold? And so I think that needs to be worked out.
Member Manville and then Member Teichen.
So I really appreciate Member Dixon bringing this forward. I think we as a country, as a state, as a city have put too much on our credit cards. And particularly in transportation, we've been really reckless. And it's important to have some reins and have some reality that not everything should be a ribbon cutting, that we should ribbon cut some slurry seal and ribbon cut some, swept sidewalks and glass removed. So I really appreciate the spirit of this, and I appreciate the wisdom one of our most senior Budget Committee members brings to us. I do think there's more work that needs to be done to make it a motion I could support, but we have a few more meetings coming forward, and I'd be happy to entertain a slightly more polished version of this, but I really appreciate the thoughtfulness, and I think it's something that we really need to face as a city, as a state, as a country.
Yeah, to echo Member Manville, my thought on this again is with thanks to Member Dixon, who is always one of the most thoughtful members of the committee, so thank you for your thought into this. I think you're also highlighting a constraint that's been delivered to us sort of as it's flown down and rolled downhill to the city. We know we need to build more housing units in our city, and we also know that for every 100 housing units that's built in the city, we only get a fraction of what we should in property taxes to maintain those. So the more and more we grow, the farther we fall behind. But I think to the mayor's point, which I agree with, is that the choice, in my mind, the decision in my mind shouldn't be, well, then we need to stop growing. And I would think the practical effect of this today as written would essentially do that. And I think that would be, I don't live in Detroit. I don't want to be a city councilor in the city of Detroit. I want to be a city councilor in a growing, thriving, innovative community, and that's what I want Salem to be. And I think that we need to continue to work both as a body, as the Budget Committee, and as a city council to deal with the problems as they come to us. So thank you again for this motion. And like Member Manville said, in its current form, I can't support it, but I greatly appreciate the thought behind it.
Are there more deliberations on the motion that's on the floor? Member Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So just for a point of clarity, because it feels like I'm getting lost in this conversation, this motion, you're simply asking, or you're stating that we should not be spending additional funds in our parks if we don't have the maintenance to take care of it. Is that what you're saying?
Is specifically directed at new parks projects, either new land acquisition or development of a new park.
Like the park that's going to be built in Ward 3.
That's right.
And your suggestion, am I okay? I just need this for clarity. And you're suggesting that we need to stop that?
I'm suggesting that the city council needs to pursue the idea. Yes, yes.
And I would second that. I mean, it is a concern. I believe that's growing to where you have some constituents that are out there that believe that we do not do a good use of spending our funds, A. And then B, I would also say that there's going to be a certain group of people that say, hey, why are we building more parks if we don't have the maintenance to take care of it? I agree with that also. I think it's in a tough place. And I think Director Martin said it perfectly, is that we would have to go back to those developers and say, hey, hold up, we don't want this anymore. which that could be its own, domino effect in and of itself. And so I appreciate the motion. I think it's definitely worthy to go deeper in. So thank you for sharing.
Member Matthews.
I mean, I think like everyone else, the fiscal responsibility behind the actual motion is, I mean, that's, I think what a lot of the community is wanting is for us to be fiscally responsible with our money and with their money, really. And so that part, I couldn't agree more when it comes to this motion. And there is a version of this motion, I don't know what it is yet, that I can probably support. Probably not this one because it's just not fully, I haven't had enough time, honestly, to even vet it out. But there is probably a version of this motion that I could support.
Any more deliberation before we vote on the motion? Yes, Member Varney.
Thank you very much. I guess my question is, I agree that this is a good idea moving forward, but it needs to be fleshed out a lot more. I think one of my questions is, for Director Martin, what can we use park SDCs for?
Generally would be for acquisition of property and then construction of improvements. Design and construction, so.
Okay.
Getting the property, designing it, constructing it, and then you'd be done. It is, you cannot use SDCs for maintenance.
Right. So I guess what I'm thinking then, if something like this was in place, then the park SDCs would just be thrown in an account someplace and held because they couldn't be used, right?
Yeah, I think I'd probably want to talk with our city attorney on that going forward, because I'm not sure if we're not going to actually build the improvements if we can collect the money. So that, the money's there to use to construct the improvements. I'd have to get more clarity on that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Oh, first of all, I would just echo what everyone else is saying. I'm very grateful for Member Dixon. Apparently he's retired. He has lots of time to do great study and into this sort of thing, and I very much appreciate his efforts. I absolutely agree with his sentiment. I also cannot support the motion in its current form, but I'm very glad they had the conversation and that the City Council, who was present, was able to hear that. We have a motion on the floor modifying Council Policy C9. All those I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
Just to clarify, it's recommending to the City Council that they modify Council Policy C9. The Budget Committee cannot.
Thank you. My shorthand was too short.
Mr. Chairman, before you proceed with the vote, sure. I would like to ask a question. Based on what I've heard, several people have indicated that there may be a version of this motion that they would support. And I would be more than happy to pursue that with them to see if we can come up with some wording that a majority of this group would support. And yes, to reiterate what Josh said, this is, and what other people have said, this is simply advisory to the City Council. But I would be willing to withdraw the motion and work on the wording, if that's even possible at this point.
Who seconded? Member Tigan. Would you support the withdrawal of the motion?
I would.
And Member Dixon?
I would.
I believe that the motion has been withdrawn. Probably to come back another day.
That's my hope. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you. All right. We are now at item 7 on the agenda, which will cover the Urban Renewal Agency budget, as well as 2 result areas of the city budget. We will begin with a presentation by Budget Manager Callie Leinenbach on the Urban Renewal Agency proposed budget and the Strong and Diverse Economy result area. Hold on, I'm not done. Due to the link between the Urban Renewal Agency budget and the Strong and Diverse Economy Result Area budget, questions for both will be taken at the conclusion of the Strong and Diverse Economy presentation. After these presentations, CFO Eggleston will present the Safe, Reliable, and Efficient Infrastructure Result Area.
Good evening, Budget Committee. My name is Callie Leinenbach, and I'm the budget manager for the city, and I'm here to present to you this evening the proposed budget for the Strong and Diverse Economy Result Area and the Urban Renewal Agency budget. The proposed fiscal year 26 budget for city funds make up $17.7 million, with urban development, parking services, cultural and tourism promotion, and the airport and downtown parking comprising most of the budget. Program information for this result area begins on page 179 of the city budget book, and there are 31.16 full-time equivalent positions that contribute to this result area's programs. So if you're following along in your printed version, this slide changed from when we printed to right now. So there were just a few changes on this slide for accuracy. Apologies for that. There are 2 vacant positions in the general fund that were proposed for elimination in this result area. A program manager supporting urban development is proposed for elimination, and then 1 parking enforcement officer is also proposed for elimination. And then there was a change. 3 real property services positions are being transferred from the general fund to the utility fund. So moving into the Urban Renewal Agency budget, the URA is a distinct corporation with the mayor and city council serving as its board of directors and the city manager as executive director. City staff, primarily in urban development, support urban renewal programs through an intergovernmental agreement with the city. The purpose of URAs is to spur redevelopment in areas that might not otherwise occur without public investment. The 8 urban renewal areas are featured on this slide. From north to south, they are North Gateway, which is the largest at 926 acres, Riverfront Downtown, West Salem, South Waterfront, Jory Apartments, the newest and smallest area established in 2020, McGillcrest, Fairview, which is no longer collecting tax increment, and Mill Creek Industrial Park. So there are 4 funds that make up the Urban Renewal Area budget. First is the Tax Allocation Bond Fund, or Debt Service Fund, and that begins on page 13 of the URA budget. And this includes the property tax increment revenues that are collected in each URA. The expenditure budget for this fund is $17.7 million. Next is the Tax Allocation Improvements Fund, or Capital Improvements Fund, which begins on page 23, and this receives proceeds from long-term and short-term borrowings in the debt service fund to pay for construction and improvement projects in each of the URAs. The total expenditure budget proposed for 2026 is $37.5 million, which represents a significant decrease of over $23 million from the fiscal year 2025 budget. This change is a result of effort to align the budget more closely with actual expenditures. Details about projects in each URA are included under the Capital Improvements tab of the URA budget. Operational revenues and expenditures of the agency-owned Salem Convention Center are accounted for in the Convention Center Fund, beginning on page 59. Revenues are derived from food sales, meeting room rentals, and equipment rentals from events or activities held at the Convention Center, and the proposed fiscal year 2026 budget is $7.7 million. When the Convention Center opened, the Urban Renewal Agency also established a gain-loss reserve to cover operating shortfalls or to fund major repairs or improvements at the facility. A combination of transient occupancy tax funds and income from the Convention Center operations have been used to fulfill this reserve. Working capital to begin fiscal year 2026 is estimated at over $4 million, maintaining the reserve goal for this reserve. The proposed budget is $917,000. So a few enhancements or highlights in this result area. Mostly continues services traditionally provided, like airport operations, transient occupancy tax-funded programs, and economic development activities. But there are a few items to highlight. Starting this summer, the downtown will transition to paid on-street parking. The additional revenue from this change should bolster the downtown parking fund and provide opportunities for services downtown that have been limited due to financial constraints. In fiscal year 2026, the airport will begin collecting revenue for terminal space rental and landing fees from the commercial airline, as well as revenue from the Emergency Medical Services Fund for leased space at the North Campus building. A development team for Block 45 on the corner of Front Street and Commercial Street will be selected soon to locate a mixed-use building at the site. And many projects are included in this result area. They're large and take several years to fund and complete. One of those is the streetscape improvements downtown. These projects update the look and feel of downtown with new sidewalks and amenities. And they also include design elements to promote tree health and improve visibility from alleyways. McGillcrest Street corridor improvements is also included in the fiscal year 2026 budget. Again, a very large project, spans multiple years, but it's estimated to be completed in 2029. And then design and installation of a left turn lane from Silverton Road onto 17th Street will begin in 2025. I heard it's going to bid in June, and it has a projected completion in 2027. And that concludes my presentation. Available for questions.
Looks like you're gearing up there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Callie. One of your opening statements, you talked about the difference in the amount budgeted for last year versus the amount budgeted for this year, and that there's quite a decrease. Yeah. I'm curious if you have an example of something that was budgeted in 2025 that didn't move forward, or how the team made those decisions in terms of what gets budgeted and what doesn't.
I think mostly it's a few things. It's not necessarily taking projects out, but it's aligning the expenditure portion of the budget for each project to more closely represent what we're anticipating to spend. So whereas we used to fully appropriate the revenue and expense, so you would see that high level of revenue and expense year after year after year, we're trying to phase it out more to what we anticipate to spend. But I don't have a good example of something that came out. I know that many projects in Mill Creek came out of the budget, just with that area paying off debt and trying to wrap up the existing projects.
Member Brown.
Thank you. Great presentation. My first question, I got at least two, Mr. Chair.
You can have two.
Thank you. The first one, it is on page 11 in our URA book, and this may be something Mr. CFO can answer. So there are no losses due to compression. I thought in prior years there were some losses due to compression, or maybe I'm just looking at something wrong.
Could you repeat, Callie, could you repeat what page we're looking at for those of us?
Yeah, it's page 11 of the URA budget, so the smaller book.
Like I thought we had losses before.
Yeah, appreciate the question. So if you look at the city budget book, you will see losses due to compression. We just don't recognize them for the urban area.
Oh.
So that's why you'll see them in the large book under the same summary, but not for the URA.
Oh, okay. See, I thought they had just disappeared. I was like, what happened to the losses? All right, so they're just not there. Perfect. And my last one, or close to my last one, on the slide, the one service enhancement highlights on that particular slide, and we're dealing with the paid on-street parking. Is this a good time to ask a parking question? Oh, perfect. Okay, so, and it's Beep Beep Salem, I believe, right? Isn't that what it's called? Beep Beep Salem? Have any staff person practice what that's going to look like?
I would love to call Kristen up.
Oh, perfect.
I sat way too far back tonight. Kristen Rutherford, Director of Community Planning and Development. And so your question is, have we practiced what the app looks like?
Yes, like for example, what's one called? Is it called Kitty Cat?
Parking Kitty, Portland Parking Kitty, yes.
Kitty Cat, Parking Kid, so somewhere in there's a cat. So, and typically on that particular app, which I tend to favor, but only because you can be in your meeting and you'll get a little prompt that tells you how many minutes are left, and you can just pay for it right there on the spot, which we know that's a gimmick, so you can keep on paying. Is it that kind of way or no?
You will be able to pay by the app in your meeting. You're not going to have to leave your meeting to go to a meeting. Yes.
Love that. And the last thing about parking is, so and you may have already addressed this. So downtown, there are some restaurants, and during the pandemic, they were sitting outside, and some people have some spots where there's a little hut where you can sit in.
Yep.
Are those going to be leaving soon?
They are not. The plan is, so right now, they pay for those spaces. The plan is that this year, as we're first implementing on-street parking, there will be a small increase to the rate that they're paying, with then working with those businesses to give them time to plan for a future decision to either go to a higher rate that would be closer to a full cost recovery for the lack of utilization of those spaces, or then to remove the platforms.
One follow-up.
So same scenario.
Okay.
So let's say I'm thinking of a restaurant, Venty's. Venty's has some seats outside, and they're paying extra for those spots.
Yes.
Suppose as a business owner, I was right beside Venty's, and let's say that I'm selling clothes. Would I be allowed to take my racks from the inside of the store, roll them outside, and take up 2 or 3 lanes?
No, because we don't have a program for that. We do have a program for the dining platforms.
Okay, so my question is this. When I think about just being equitable, if a restaurant can do it, but someone who sells clothes can't, why is that fair? Or how is it fair?
That is a good question. The fairness question, that hasn't come up. So again, this was a program that was started into the pandemic to allow businesses to stay operational. It was a program that then, under prior council policy, was approved as an ongoing and continuing program because of the popularity of that program. During the pandemic, there was no cost for those spaces, but we have been moving then to charges for those spaces and then increasing that as we start converting from free on-street parking to paid parking, right? So that is a council policy decision. If council chose to unwind that policy and wanted to eliminate this program, that would be a decision that council could make.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
I believe Josh said that we can't leave tonight until every staff member present has an opportunity to speak. Is that true, Josh? All right, Member Curtis.
Thank you. I have a question about parking as well. So on page 187 of the big book, parking enforcement will be almost $1.5 million, excuse me, from the general fund, and 8.4 FTE. And my question is just kind of a general question. Does parking, just managing parking, does that put us in the red? Or do we bring in more money than we're expending?
We can bring back the answer to that question.
Member Curtis, are you asking if the expenses in order to operate the program are covered by the revenues?
Or if the expenses are more than the revenue that we have? Because it just shocked me that it's $1.5 million just to deal with parking. Yeah.
And Josh, you said you'd bring that back.
Okay.
We can bring that back. One of the challenges that we have with parking is not an enterprise fund. So our revenues and expenses are split across different funds, right? So the fines or penalties, tickets that people pay, does not come to the parking fund. The parking fund is the business tax and permit revenue. The expenses for enforcement fall within the general fund. So it makes it very difficult to look and just have a crystal clear snapshot of whether or not revenues are covering our expenses. So that is something that with this migration to paid on-street parking that we want to revisit in is, creating an enterprise fund to have more transparent reporting on parking management.
I think Josh wanted to say something on this point.
Yeah, just real quick. So parking fines is budgeted in the general fund at $503,000. You can see that on page 364 of the general fund revenues. It is separate than the parking enforcement. And I will say, so this is the revenue coming in, but there are other costs not represented either in the parking enforcement or in the revenue. Because for every fine, it has to be adjudicated at the municipal court, and then they go down to the customer service center or pay online for that fine. So there are additional staff costs that aren't represented there. So there are. It's not a moneymaker if that's what people are thinking.
I'm going to go to the mayor, and then I'm going to go down this row right here.
Thank you. Could one of you, or probably Kristen, speak to the feathering that needs to happen between the old way and the new way? Like it's not like a switch goes off and there'll be some lag?
So you're talking about the change from the parking tax to the metered revenue? Yeah. So we do plan on phasing out the parking tax. We don't have a date yet for when that will happen. We want to reevaluate this about 6 months into having the paid on-street system up and running. We have estimates for the revenue that we will be bringing in, but until it's operational, we don't know how much leakage we might have, which would be, people not using the meters and using the parking garages more, or parking in other areas, or taking buses, or that sort of thing. So we want to see, what revenues look like for the first 6 months. We're thinking that it will be in the, 12-month to 18-month, that then we would start the process of going through the ordinance to terminate the parking tax.
Follow up?
Just to be clear, then the businesses will still pay for their street parking?
There will be a payment this upcoming year. So parking will go live, paid on street parking will go live July 10th. Invoices for parking tax will also go out in July. Right now, we're not sure if there will be a July 26 payment or not. That's what we want to reevaluate in 6 months. What we aren't doing is we're not increasing the parking tax this year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Member Matthews?
Well, some of what I was going to ask was kind of already answered. It was, do we have a projection of how much revenue we're looking at from the paid parking versus what our current we are getting from the parking fees?
Yeah, our revenue projections are, we're looking at 1.4 to 1.7 million. And I'd have to dig through here to find the page that shows what this year's revenue was from the parking tax.
Okay.
But it was less, significantly less.
Less, got it.
I think Josh is looking for that, but we'll move on to Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair and Director Rutherford. So it looks like the downtown parking tax is projected to go down 52% on page 345. Am I misreading the?
So we're anticipating that we're going to have a lot of businesses that are going to say, you're going to pay, we're just not going to pay this year. So we have out of 300 and 50 some businesses downtown, might be 380, I forget the exact number, that pay the parking tax. Every year we have somewhere between 50 to 80 that end up going to collections because they don't pay, and then we have more on top of that are just delayed in their payment, delinquent. So with this conversion, we're expecting that the number that default will likely increase.
Follow up?
And we just write that off?
We do go to collections.
But we think overall we're going to get half as much as we did?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
we are trying to be conservative in our estimates.
Totally respect that, yeah. Parking structure operations are looking to increase by 45%. Can you talk to that a little bit?
We do have some deferred maintenance on parking structures that we're budgeting to take care of. We also have, and it wouldn't be in this, it's in the Urban Renewal Fund, we've got a significant renovation project to the Marion parking garage that will also be occurring.
Member Tigan?
Oh, I didn't even have my hand up, but sure, I've got a question.
I thought I saw it.
Thank you. Actually, this goes back to the airport, and I wanted to ask a question to have a point restated. Kelly, I suppose you could help us there. We've heard a lot of traffic in our city of Salem email accounts, and I think the Budget Committee as well, about Avelo Airlines and the 2-year subsidy for both landing fees and the lease on their space at the airport, which I know is only a fraction of the landing fee. Can you confirm that when that agreement ends in October, that we won't be subsidizing their landing fees at the airport or their lease of space at the airport itself?
Yeah, you're correct.
So the budget that we have before us budgets the collection of fees from Avelo starting in October when that agreement ends?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Earthworth, I need to go back to parking because I'm not completely clear. So collections, you said we got like 300 some businesses downtown, 300 something, and less than half don't pay their taxes?
No, that's not correct. It's about probably closer to 20%.
20% don't pay their taxes, and that goes to collections.
Yes.
Out of collections, what do we get back?
I'd have to look into that and follow up.
Okay, and the only reason I'm asking is because, not saying that every adult in here, well, I won't blame it on you. I've had something go into collections before, right? And so if something goes in collections, that's when you can cut a deal for less than the amount that you paid, right? And so if businesses are still making money downtown and they purposely allow something to go into collections, they could be doing that on purpose because it benefits them.
They could be, yes.
I think that's interesting. I really do, Councilor Gordon. I think that's interesting. Because if you have a business downtown and you are deliberately not paying, you're doing that on purpose because you don't want to pay.
I will say that most of the businesses that do go to collections are very small businesses, right? And so they are the businesses that are paying the minimum tax, but they are also businesses that are struggling to stay in business. So I wouldn't want to assume any malintent on their part.
Perfect. So having said that, because I'm so glad you said it, wouldn't it be beneficial for almost every business downtown to have 2 or 3 additional parking spots out in front? And the reason I say that is because if you can do it for a restaurant where you eat outside, why can't the barbershop take up 3 or 4 more spots? Because that brings in more revenue for their business. And if only a few business owners can have parking lots, that's a system that's in balance. And so a business owner can come down to me or go see Councilor Tigan, and they'll say, hey, I want some spots also. How do we lobby for them to get some parking spots?
So again, I would say that this is a previously approved council policy, and we could certainly have that conversation about whether or not as a policy council wants to continue.
Love it. It's all in your ward, so.
That does sound like a council issue, not a budget committee issue. So you can take that up with your fellow councilors. Member Dixon, we haven't actually heard from you for a while.
No, I was just going to offer an apology for being retired, but I'll move on. I do have a couple. Are questions about urban renewal appropriate at this time, or is that a different discussion?
I believe now is the appropriate time. Callie?
Okay.
Go ahead.
My understanding is there are 3 urban renewal areas that will reach maximum indebtedness or have already reached it. McGilchrist reached it in '24, North Gateway this year, and Mill Creek in 2027. Do you have a sense of how much tax revenue could be returned to the general fund if all of those districts were, once they reach maximum indebtedness, were terminated? And if not, can you get back to us on that?
I appreciate the question. I think we did return one of these answers in one of the packets. I'd have to check to see which one it was. So the current budget reflects McGilchrist no longer collecting tax increments. So there's no additional revenue coming from that one. For North Gateway and Mill Creek, we're estimating between the two of them approximately just under $4 million would return to the general fund. Just under $4 million would return to the general fund.
Okay. And just one follow-up question.
Sure.
Is the city's plan then, when they reach maximum indebtedness, to close them down and get that revenue back to the general fund?
So just to clarify, when you reach maximum indebtedness, you can no longer collect tax increments. So at this point, unless there's some massive shift, we stop the collection.
So, just to clarify, I believe that North Gateway is also in 2027, not 2026.
Yes.
North Gateway's already had a substantial amendment. Even if we wanted to, we could not increase the maximum indebtedness for North Gateway. So it will be closing down, or we'll stop collecting TIF. So usually we stop collecting the tax increment, and then with that balance on hand that we've collected for projects, we continue to do the projects and pay it out. And once we have spent down the cash on hand, then we formally close it. So it will stay open for some years as we go through that process. And then Mill Creek, we will be reaching maximum indebtedness, and we do not have a plan to increase that or go through the substantial amendment process. So both will be returning to the tax rolls in the next couple of years.
So when would we expect to see that money start flowing to the general fund, if I may ask a follow-up?
It's usually the year following when we stop collecting tax increment. So we hit the maximum indebtedness, and then we go through a process with the county and notify them that we're no longer collecting. So if we reach maximum indebtedness in 27, fiscal year 27, the money would come to the city fiscal year 28.
So by 2028, we should be seeing that revenue flowing to the general fund.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thought I saw member, okay, all right. Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair. Shifting gears a bit, I noticed in the report the lodging tax is currently 9%, and channeling Member Dixon, perhaps I did notice in the CIP some things were removed because of shortfalls in lodging tax revenue from like roof repairs, maintaining historic structures, things like that. Can you tell us how the 9% compares to other cities?
We can certainly bring back that question. I think we've had that question before. I will say the 9% is in the city charter. So in order to adjust that, we'd have to have a vote of the people of Salem.
Go ahead, Member Manville.
Sorry, I have a few more. Like I was trying to be pausing. Going back to the airport, I notice on page 190, Avelo's, it says you have seasonal service to Las Vegas, and I didn't know if that's a permanent change. I had understood that was a short-term change, given that we were low on the totem, low on the pecking order of where pilots and airplanes should go, and so they canceled it briefly, but I didn't know if it's shifted completely to just seasonal service.
At this point in time, they're saying it's seasonal service. Now that could change depending on flight loads and pilot availability, plane availability, but right now we're considering seasonal.
Thank you. And I also noticed the working capital for the airport and the building and safety funds, pages 297 and 302, kind of dipped down significantly, and I didn't know if that was a concern or you could say anything about that.
Yeah, appreciate the question. So the building and safety drawdown of fund balance was an internal loan for the startup costs for the emergency medical services transport. So all the capital expenses related with the starting back up. Interfund loan, we can have up to a 10-year loan from one fund to another fund. So the EMS fund is going to be paying debt service back to the building and safety. So that's the drawdown you see for that $6 million loan to EMS. For the airport, that's more related to increased operational costs and a decline in fund balance, and that is what was reflected at the forecast meeting for the airport back in January.
Yes, and yes, we are concerned about it. We're looking at ways to try and generate more revenue so that does not dip the way it's looking right now.
I'll interject. Callie, there were three, I don't remember exactly what it said, but 3 real service positions or real estate positions that moved from the general fund to the utility fund. Can you speak a little bit more to that and the appropriateness of them in the utility fund?
Yeah, so those positions have offsetting revenue, and they do actually a lot of work for construction projects that they charge to and get reimbursed for. So anytime they're doing work for another fund, they're charging out their time. So they're pretty well cost recovered. But it's for alignment. They did a lot of work for utility projects and other construction projects.
Member Manville?
Thank you. I was pausing. To Member Tigan's point about what costs we're covering for Avelo, my understanding is that we spend about $1 million in police and fire and another $696,000 or so from the general fund to support the commercial air service. So am I correct that that kind of reads as what we're paying, so Avelo will be here?
Yes, generally that is approximately the correct amount. And again, I think we had a question where we provided a more concrete answer on that one. Yes.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll go back to Member Manville.
Apologies, everyone. So this is a really hard time in our country. We get up here and we pledge allegiance for liberty and justice for all, and we've got chained men being paraded in front of foreign prisons for propaganda. People are being flown out of this country in defiance of court orders and are returned in defiance of the Supreme Court. And we're all like just going on like nothing's happening. And the reason I bring this up, and the president is trying to do this too, I was fantasizing about doing this to American citizens as well, just shipping them overseas where our laws don't apply anymore, to torture prisons. And these flights are projected, people on them are projected to be shackled, soiling themselves, no ability in case of an emergency to escape. And I'm bringing this up because the airline that's planning to do this in the future is Avelo Airlines. And when faced with this, the CEO said, well, I understand it's controversial, but it's too valuable not to pursue. So I think that needs to weigh heavily on us, that our tax dollars are facilitating this sort of un-American, unconstitutional torture of people. Now, I understand up to now it has not been U.S. citizens, but there's still due process. And if the airline that we're partnering with, our tax dollars are funding this, we're complicit. And I don't have a motion yet. I have a lot of emotion, And I have a lot of shame that this is happening in America today. Thank you for the moment.
Josh, I would follow up that with a question. As I read the responses to Budget Committee member questions, we're under contract currently with the provider, meaning it didn't look like, even if, and it would be a council decision, even if council wished to sever the relationship, are we not under a contract?
That is correct. We have a 10-year contract with the air carrier.
I'm going to go to Member Fuller.
I would say that we could relook at that contract after Avelo gives such a substantial change, mirroring what Member Manville is saying. That seems like a good, in insurance, you have a change in condition or something that's called when you get to reevaluate. And it's a weird link, but I think it'd be worth looking at.
I very much appreciate this conversation. I'm not sure that it's Budget Committee level conversation as opposed to council, but I very much appreciate the conversation. Mayor, did you have something you want? I saw something in my periphery. Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I appreciate the heart and the sentiment to this thinking. I get it. I understand that this business has made a business decision. Changing that contract with the city would cost us tremendously financially, and we can't afford it. And we have big work to do right here. And I guess I would further add to Member Curtis's remarks, we can't fear that which we don't know. And we have to work within what we know to be real, the work directly in front of us here in Salem, Oregon. The big picture is big and it's worrisome, but it can't prevent us from being functional and healthy. We owe that to the citizens of Salem, and to bring about that which brings peace as much as we can within our power. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Member Vieira, man, I've been practicing all week. Vieira Brandel.
Thank you. I understand your sentiments, Mayor, and I also would just counter with, I think this is very real for people here. I don't think that we can separate this as something beyond this city. I know that there were children who have been terrified in this school district of if their parents are going to disappear when they come home, if they'll be there. We've had ICE agents spotted in our community. I think the threat is real. I personally have family members and friends and loved ones that I worry about their safety every day. And so I think when we talk about what we can and cannot control, I understand that we don't want to think too far beyond what we can control. And I don't want us to be dismissive of what is real and what is happening in people's lives in our community.
Member Fuller.
I don't think Avelo made a business decision. I mean, it ultimately is a business decision to make money off of this, but I don't want our city to contribute to their business decision if it's at the expense of what it's being spent as.
Member Matthews, I think you had your hand up.
So all week I lamented on something that actually Member Brandel said last week, which was the decisions in this room have to be made with our heads and not with our hearts. And sometimes that's really difficult to do, but that is the reality of this room. You're here to make decisions with our heads. And I'm just going to say this from a complete head perspective. If we were to cancel a contract with Avelo, and you were Avelo, I guess I would want to know, did you also look at whether Salem PD uses the same bulletproof vests as ICE does? Did you look at whether we buy the same vehicle, manufacturer vehicles? Because each one of those also have some sort of contract with ICE. And so to what avail would we put the city in a financial predicament? Because that's where I would be looking if I'm looking at it with my head and not my heart.
We do have one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Member Fuller. We do have another results area this evening. Then there'll be more time for Budget Committee discussion. First of all, thank you, Callie. And now we'll move on to Josh. The result area. Oh, can we take? At Councilor Gwyn's request, we will go ahead and take a 5-minute break.
Head back to your seats, please.
Thank you, Councilor Gwyn, for the well-timed request for a break. We are now moving on to our next result area, strong, reliable, and efficient infrastructure. CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure is the second result area we'll review this evening. The safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure section begins on pages 151, and the capital improvement section is on page 227. This result area has a total budget of $157.4 million. The construction funds have a total budget of $155.7 million. There are 291.48 full-time equivalent positions included in this results area. It includes utility maintenance and operations, infrastructure project management, transportation services, streetlight services, and then debt service for our general obligation bonds. A highlight for workforce changes is 3 positions were transferred from the administration division of the utility fund to warehouse services in the city services fund. If you probably won't remember, but I remember when positions moved from the warehouse to the utility fund, so they're now moving back several years later, just to align the function in the city service fund. A few service enhancement or highlights. In transportation, adjusted timing of downtown signals, 3-second delay to increase safety for pedestrians, new stop signs installed around Ingold Elementary School, signs and markings renewed along the railroad quiet zone through Northeast Salem. A couple grant highlight here is Safe Routes to School grant, enhanced pedestrian crossing at Market Street Northeast and 15th Street Northeast, and a school safety zone improvements near Leslie Middle School. The city successfully completed the lead and copper service line inventory as required by the Oregon Health Authority by the deadline with no findings after randomly sampling 383 water service lines. Also, the combination of Salem's slow sand filters, ozone treatment, and chlorine completely eliminated the toxins, and Salem's water remained safe to drink throughout the entire cyanotoxin season, which was a historically high level, and this can run into mid-fall. This effort includes an intensive testing effort by the lab technicians at the Willow Lake Wastewater Pollution Control Facility. A few highlights for some projects, water projects, hydroelectric in-pipe power, a grant from the Community Renewable Energy from DEQ, and I apologize for that typo. It should be DEQ, for a planning study of in-pipe hydroelectric at 2 different sites along the transmission lines from Guerin Island into the city. Guerin Island channel flow maintenance, Franzen Reservoir cover and liner replacement, as we talked about earlier, the Detroit water supply mitigation, and then Fabry Road Southeast water main phase 2 replacement. For wastewater, pipe rehabilitation at Waldo Avenue Southeast and Center Street Northeast, Commercial Street Southeast pipe replacement, Brush College sewer main replacement, and force main evaluation. If you remember the issue in near West Salem for the force main, this is the evaluation of the force mains throughout the city. For stormwater, highlighting culvert replacements at 16th Street at East Fork Pringle Creek, and McGilchrist Street Southeast at Clark Creek, the swale rehabilitation at Bailey Ridge Park, and the stormwater main construction at 27th Avenue Southeast. And staff are available for any questions you might have on this results area.
Thank you, Josh. Are there any questions of Josh for this results area? Oh, Mr. Bailychecks.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, but a comment so much. I want to thank the folks at the City of Salem who provide our delicious drinking water. I think I'm glad it seems like a unanimous feeling. My children love the water, and when they travel or purchase bottled water, they compare it to Salem city water as the benchmark of deliciousness. So kudos to whoever makes the flavorful water. Thank you, and keep it up.
I asked for questions, but that was a very good comment. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Josh for this result area? Member Manville, you are not even retired. but go ahead, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to everyone for my use of the microphone. I apologize. The total area of sidewalks repaired, what's the unit on that? The page 154, it's 34,000 square feet, square something?
Square feet.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up. First, for those who didn't hear Monday's meeting and how amazing the city staff is compared to and the workload compared to other cities, just want to say our city manager's office does what 8 times the size of a city manager's office does in Hillsborough, and twice as much as Medford, which is our closest comparison. And you all do amazing work. So I'm loath to ask you to do more, but I just wanted to ask a general question. In these result areas, we measure outputs, and as somebody who we struggle with this to measure our success, we're kind of more interested in outcomes. And I'm curious if you've ever included that. When I think about how I'm measuring, are we succeeding in safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure, how many traffic deaths are we having? How many serious injuries are we having? Because those are I'm not asking you to take credit or blame for that, but to reflect that on, hey, how much work do we have to do as a city? Traffic deaths are in part individual, but they're in part our infrastructure. If you move to Canada, you're half as likely to die in traffic. If you move to Sweden, you're 1/8 as likely to die in traffic. So I'm curious if our result areas, and as we think about the city priorities and our reporting on our success, have we ever had kind of general outcomes measures and not just output measures, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Performance management and exactly what you're talking about, making sure you're talking about outcomes and not outputs, is an area of improvement that we have identified for sure.
I hadn't seen anything else. Member Manville, you have another question?
No, I just wanted to say I'm not asking you to do more work. I'm just noting that and hoping that we can get more people to not need. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you. Mayor.
Thank you, Member Manville. I'd like to piggyback on your appreciation for staff's capabilities. They really do a tremendous amount of work I've learned so much in the process of the levy, realizing that we do with so much less than a comparable city like Eugene. Because of Measures 5 and 50, which I grew very weary of hearing people talk about. Eugene, for instance, was set at a tax rate back in 1997 that brings Eugene $17 million more a year than we get. They also have a payroll tax. They also don't have to provide police service for the entire University of Oregon campus. So our folks are doing a lot with less. And it's also Staff Appreciation Day, if you didn't know. So I'm going to run a risk here. And to all the staff present and those listening, because they don't have anything better to do with their time, on a Wednesday evening, hip, hip. Hooray. Hip, hip. Hooray. Hip, hip. Hooray. That's it. I don't know if that's ever happened at a council meeting before. But I will say to if I may, what's not the treatment facility, Guerin Island, what's the storage space? What's the name with the tarp?
Franzen Reservoir?
Yes, that one. I've been there and I've seen that tarp. It's not just like it's old and it needs to be replaced. It's a hazard. And I was invited, might have been Jason Pulley, I can't remember who, said, you're welcome to walk on it, but you should take a rope, because it is falling apart. And it's a vast amount of tarp. I'm just curious, does anybody, how much tarp is that? It's many, many, many acres. It's a lot. It's a big tarp. So that's why it's so expensive, and I have proof that it needs to be fixed. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very eager to see how Hip Hip Hooray makes it into the minutes. So, are there any other? Vice Chair Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the neighborhood traffic management plan, I walk my daughter to school every day at Pringle Elementary. And so I was glad to see that Inglewood got some love and stop sign was installed. However, I'm going to use, for me, my neighborhood as an example, and I'm sure there are other neighborhoods as well. At the corner of Reed and Baxter is a pretty busy intersection in which Baxter has stop signs on both sides, but Reed does not. And the reason why I bring that up is, one, it's a block away from a school, block away from a park. And as I'm walking my daughter to school, I also see a line of high schoolers walking across Reed who have to stop and navigate cars that are driving along Reed to cross to go over to where the school bus picks them up. So the question that I have is, how are we as a city communicating with our Salem Kaiser School District and their bus route plan to ensure safety for children as young as kindergarten all the way up through high school, to look at where these kids are crossing the roads so that we take the threat of being hit by a car out of the way? Because believe me, even on my quiet corner, and I look drivers in the eyes, they still drive right on past, even though I'm here with my child's in the lunchbox, clearly going to cross the road to go drop her off at school, and they zoom right on past me. If that's a problem in my quiet corner, I'm sure it is worse around the city. And so I'd like to know how we are going to manage that.
Staff?
Brian Martin, Public Works Director. I'm going to go ahead and start again. I have the luxury tonight of having some very talented Public Works staff with me to help answer some of these questions, and that's a tough question. I know that our traffic planning staff, transportation planning staff, work with the Safe Routes to School coordinator for SCATS actually to help with some of those issues, but we have a long way to go. And you're mentioning something that Mayor Hoy and I just talked about within the last 2 weeks about something on Fisher Road, and the same thing. Is there a way to coordinate with the school district to get the bus locations put in a location that's more safe. In that case, we're able to do that. And so it's really just a working relationship with the school district to identify these and to try and make them safer. I will say, when we talk about a shortage of staff, our traffic and transportation groups are probably the leanest in public works. And so their workload is very, very challenging and difficult. They do the best they can, but it helps to have the community provide input because they can't be everywhere. So Julie is here. Would you have anything else to add?
The school site assessments that we do partner with the school district on as well.
Come on.
Remember, I said every staff member.
Good evening, Julie Hanson, Transportation Planning Manager in Public Works. In addition to the ongoing relationships that we have with the staff at the school district, part of that is our traffic engineering team will regularly go out to different schools when they do school site assessments. And so that's an opportunity to focus on, to go out and actually watch the issues that are happening with the principal, with the school district staff, with the Safe Routes to School coordinator, and identify things that can be changed both on city system as well as on the school district property. But as Director Martin mentioned, the needs definitely are much greater than the funding available. And so through the Neighborhood Solutions program, the Safer Street program, we ask for residents and the school district staff and transit staff to submit needs that they know about so that we can, prioritize them. And also keep them, be aware of them going forward as we seek funding and seek different grants.
Follow-up, Vice Chair Cohen.
Thank you, Chair. So, Director Martin, if this group of yours is the leanest, what would you need in order to beef it up? Like 10 people, 20 people, how many millions of dollars? What fund account would this come out of? How could we as the budget team support your staff in this endeavor?
So they are funded out of the Transportation Fund, which is the same fund one of your peers was talking about earlier, where we have a shortfall in funding and that starts to go in the wrong direction. One thing I didn't share earlier is ODOT, well, our Transportation Fund is funded by state highway gas tax funds. So that's where we get our annual allotment. It's about $14.5 million a year. ODOT through the state is looking at increasing revenues to cover not only their expenses through the gas tax fund and other funds, but it would also help counties and cities. So there's a formula where they collect that money and 50% of it goes to ODOT, 30% goes to the counties, and 20% goes to the cities. And with some of the proposals they're changing, we're actually looking at it this afternoon. That $14.5 million that we get annually now could increase by up to $9.9 million by 2032. So they're setting taxes and fee structures in a graduated scale. It wouldn't all come in the first year, but that may help us creep up dollar values to see where we could allocate more funding for transportation infrastructure maintenance. Maybe we could add another planner or traffic engineer. I don't know the numbers because we haven't had the funding in place to say what do we really need. I haven't asked for it. I've heard Julie tell me many times the city of Eugene has how many transportation planners? 10. 10 to our 2. So.
Are there other questions for staff on this results area? Mayor Hoy. Oh, I'm sorry, she is deferring to Member Dixon first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor. This is more of a conceptual question. Is there, or would it be helpful to take a systematic look at ways to make the transportation fund and parks operation more financially sustainable? Or is that a conversation that's already underway, ongoing, intensive, and doesn't need any extra help?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. As far as maintaining the current services, those are the revenue measures that the council put forward on the ballot. As far as increasing the maintenance staff, that's not something that we've considered at this point on the park side. The transportation services fund has been on the watch list for several years now. It was always after we solve the issue in the general fund, we'd look at the transportation services fund. That was even back to the 2018 Sustainable Services Revenue Task Force that came out of that strategic plan. Is one of the recommendations was a local gas tax, which we don't have in place. So it's certainly something that we've considered. I don't know about a systematic way that we've evaluated those things specifically or together, but the Budget Committee would certainly be part of those conversations as we're moving forward. Likely you'd get status updates at the financial forecast meeting, especially on the Transportation Services Fund and the General Fund.
Thank you.
Member Tigert.
Yeah, to Member Dixon's question, on Monday night, we had a work session here in council reviewing the audits that have been conducted by Moss Adams over the last year and the one that'll continue into the future. Part of that, I feel like those audits have definitely given us more information as a council. And the part of their proposal was considering whether to continue the auditing program into fiscal year 2026. But the areas in which we would ask them to audit haven't been identified. So a recommendation from the Budget Committee on which areas to consider if that auditing program was to continue, I think would be welcomed.
Okay, Mayor Hoy.
Thank you. I just want to speak just a little bit to the safe routes to school point that's been made here tonight. And Councillor Tigan brought it up, and Director Martin brought it up. The importance of saying something. Member Cohen, it's really important to say something when you see something that isn't working well. The Fisher Road situation came about because I'm just working in my restaurant, and somebody comes in, and a distinguished gentleman who pulled me aside, and I didn't know him, and he said, "Look, I live on Fisher Road, and a terrible thing happened there in 2017, and 2 little girls walked 1,500 feet right in front of that spot to get to school, and there's no sidewalk. They're going rather to the bus stop." And his story was very compelling. He was very calm, and I reached out to Brian Martin and said, "What can we do?" And we don't need anything else bad to happen on this stretch of Fisher Road. And thank God, within a week, Brian had sent message to the school district, to the police chief, to others, and I think the bus stop has changed. It'll be changed by the end of this week, I believe. So making something like that happen when you see something that isn't safe is possible, and we just need to find a way around it. So thank you for speaking up.
I think what I think of now is see something, say something. But are there any other questions on this results area? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. The final item tonight under special orders of business is an opportunity for the committee to continue any earlier discussion or introduce an issue or concern for the committee's consideration. Member Geyer.
Thank you, Chair. This is kind of just a timing question, kind of general, but I've had a lot of questions from my neighbors and community members not really understanding how this budget process is going to work if the levy passes and if it does not pass. Can we get a clarification on how it would look like if it passes and how it will look like if it doesn't pass, considering how we are voting?
I believe city staff has a recommendation on that front. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the intent right now is to work through the proposed budget as is, not counting on new revenue because we don't know the outcome. Actually, the Budget Committee making a final recommendation to City Council before you conclude your work, either on May 7th or May 14th. the levy vote occurs on May 20th. We have noticed an alternate meeting on May 28th. So the intent would be if the levy passes, and we know if it passes, by May 28th is we would hold that meeting and revise the budget. So we have an alternate scenario ready. So as we've walked through some of the reductions, most of them were last week at Welcome Livable Community. We've noted which ones would be added back if the levy passes. So we have that recommendation ready to come back to you on the 28th if it were to pass.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Cohen and then Member Manville.
Thank you, Chair Allen. I guess I have a question on that. Since we are a vote by mail state, and I love that we're a vote by mail, but the thing that I don't love, and I would love to change, is that you can put a ballot in the mail day of election, because then that delays the process of the election people to count your ballot. So the question that I have is, what is going to be the city's comfortability threshold as we are waiting for the elections to come out? Because they will not be certified by the county election, whatever his person title is, for another, I would say, month. Is 8 days enough time? I don't think it is. Is it going to be like, if we're ahead, if the levy's ahead by 10 percentage points, 20 percentage points, we're going to come back? Or if we're in the 3 points, is that too much in the margins? We have to wait till it's fully certified. I think that needs to be worked out.
Staff?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think if it's clear, it's going to pass. Yeah, and I don't have that. I think it would be a call with the leadership team and consulting perhaps with, what the voting looks like, what percentage we're at compared to other elections. I don't think we have a clear answer for that tonight of what that would mean. The timing gets really tight. So after May 28th, if we had to notice another meeting, we have to give 5 days notice. And then we have to give 10 days notice before the public hearing that's currently scheduled on June 9th. So it just gets really challenging and things get backed up pretty quickly. If we don't know by the 28th, I think we would go through an effort to make it work, which might include scheduling additional meetings for the budget committee at a different date and potentially a special council meeting to hold the public hearing after we can actually notice it. So if we go down that road, we'll be in communication with the budget committee if it's not clear that it's going to pass.
I had Member Manville and then Member Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I think it'd be my preference to not adopt a budget before the vote. I think that the amount of negotiating and trying to find something we can all support without knowing if 8% of it is there or not might be more work than and might be kind of tear us apart a little bit. And so my preference would be to wait and maybe on the 20, have a meeting on the 21st, have a meeting, I know that we won't know, but we'll have a sense. It's unless it's super close. So that would be my preference.
It was Member Curtis and then back to Member Geyer.
Thanks. Could we adopt two budgets, like two scenarios, or is that too onerous?
I don't believe you're allowed to, but Josh, you need the floor.
I mean, if there's one, if the vote passes, then we're going with this one, and if it doesn't, I mean, I don't know, and I don't even know if we have timelines on adopting a budget, one budget.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. There's no if statements for a recommended budget. So unfortunately, there's one recommended budget from the budget committee.
It makes too much sense, no.
Member Geyer?
I'm just curious, is there any precedent that the city has done this before with a budget and a levy on an election?
Certainly not in my tenure. So there's different ways to do it. So you're actually allowed to assume the revenue. We didn't feel it was appropriate to assume that it would pass So there's certainly different tracks, but as far as the city of Salem, we don't have a precedent, at least not in recent history.
Back to member
Just
Garner.
a quick follow-up. I mean, I understand what member Manville is saying. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the public would want. Would they want us to wait and say, hey, you know what? We have to wait to see what you guys vote, and then we'll do the budget? Or do they want us to do it first? I don't know. I'm not sure. Not sure.
As you answer that question, Josh, I'll layer on to it. Is that a decision that is in the hands of the Budget Committee, obviously via motion, or is that in the hands of City Council / City Manager's Office?
It's a good question. So your work is concluded. When you recommend a budget to the City Council, you also have to adopt a property tax levy, which would include a local option levy. I think I'll have to check to see if you could do that at the council level or if you have to reconvene. But I think it's within the purview of the Budget Committee to decide your timing to a point. But we're getting really tight. And my concern is when you go to that 28th, say the levy doesn't pass, and trying to deliberate on what that looks like in one evening with the timing constraint, I'm not sure that's possible.
You're correct. I was just thinking about it. As long as the Budget Committee doesn't make a motion to approve a budget, you don't have a budget approved. So simply by dragging its feet, I'm not suggesting that's what it should do, but simply by dragging its feet, it could do that. But I don't know if they appreciated a comment you made earlier in that once the Budget Committee has concluded its work, you have to then publish a notification in a newspaper and then wait 10 days before the council can start deliberating. And when you're talking about May 28th, you're suddenly running out of calendar.
Yeah, that is correct. So we have to have a 10 actual days, not business days. Don't worry, I looked. So we're really tight. So even on the 28th, we have a day-ish to turn around, that documentation to get it published, to give us that 10 days before the public hearing on the 9th. As I said, if we don't know if it passes, I think we're willing to do some things to make that shift if needed. But it's extremely challenging even for this body. You can't make any actions without 10 votes, which sometimes is a challenge when you're talking about scheduling special meetings, alternate meetings. We could have a similar challenge at the City Council level, making sure we have a quorum for a public hearing and the adoption.
That is a reminder for any new Budget Committee members that it doesn't matter how many people are in the room. It requires 10 votes to pass any kind of motion or the budget. Any other questions or comments in this section of the agenda, which is open to anything? I am seeing none, and we'll have more opportunities to get together in the future. So thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We'll now move on to the final topic of the evening, which is public testimony. It's on the agenda for future budget issues. We have made an exception this evening. Alyssa Kokkinis is signed up to testify on Zoom. She was unavailable to do that earlier in the agenda, so we allowed her to go ahead and take her 3 minutes now. So Alyssa, you have 3 minutes. At that point, if you're still talking, I will have to cut you off. But we are eager to hear your testimony.
Great. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for working this out with me. Hi, my name is Alyssa. I spoke last week. I live in Ward 1. I'm also a senior library assistant, but I'm speaking as a private citizen. And I just wanted to touch on a few different points that were added to the questions you all had last week or in the addendum. So the first thing I want to talk about is staff tenure. In terms of staff tenure at the library, I really don't believe that the city's accurately showing the tenure of the 12 people at the library who received a layoff notice. that for the library, this includes a handful of staff who are reaching their 10-year mark with the city or have reached it. So using an average years of service for library employees and parks employees who received a layoff notice, I don't believe adequately shows the impact on the lives of people who chose to dedicate a decade of their life to public service. Mayor Hoy, as you said earlier, it's Staff Appreciation Day. I just have to ask why you didn't celebrate National Library Workers Day, and I think it's because you chose that we're all gonna get our layoff notices the day after, so my bad. I'd like to talk about the Wi-Fi question that was brought up as well. I found it a little bit unfounded. Wi-Fi does not replace library services, and if the library is going from 38 to 20 hours a week and the Wi-Fi is not on during closed hours, then you're depriving your constituents 18 hours of extra Wi-Fi time and also free computer time, because not everyone has a device that they can connect to our Wi-Fi. And while the Wi-Fi hotspots are great, they do circulate between all of our 18 member libraries and CCRLS, so there's an extensive holds list. And then I wanted to talk next about the proposed distribution of library hours. I know it's just a scenario according to the proposed budget. That's only showing open hours. That does not account for the thousands of items that the remaining 9 FTE, who are the public-facing staff, will need to process. This means checking in all the returns at the library, checking in returns from the book drops, which we currently retrieve every 2 hours each day, putting items on the carts for reshelving, shelving said carts, pulling holds, processing those holds, shelving those holds. And these are just the hundreds of holds we get per week from our own pull lists at Salem Public Library. This does not include the thousands of items we get in the courier every week. So all that remaining staff would also need to process and reshelve and place hold slips in those items as well. It is simply not possible to do all of this circulation work with the skeleton staff proposed in this proposal budget. The city is on its way to creating an abusive workplace for remaining library staff. And then I'd like to talk about bilingual staff. Leaving only 6 bilingual staff to man the library does not adequately support bilingual library services. One of those members is not public facing, so that leaves only 5. And of those 5, 4 speak Spanish and 1 speaks Chinese. So yeah, I do not think these cuts should come to fruition. Also, you should cut your contract with the Velo because screw ICE. Thanks.
Is there anyone present who would like to provide testimony regarding items not on the agenda? I don't see anybody rushing to the podium. As we head toward adjournment this evening, I wanted to remind everyone the next Budget Committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 30th, 2025 at 6 p.m. The Budget Committee will review the good governance and safe and healthy result area budgets, as well as conduct a public hearing on the possible uses of state revenue sharing. And with that, we are adjourned.